Hello, it's Tuesday, September 25th, 2018, and you're watching Life Talk. My name is Mark Crutcher, president of Life Dynamics, and lurking on the other side of the table, yes, lurking.
I don't know about lurking, but we are sitting on the other side of the table.
Yep.
I'm Renee Hobbs.
It's Renee Hobbs, my worthy assistant here, and my daughter, Sheila.
Yes.
Listen, we got a lot of stuff to get to, so let's get right to it. Has signed a law, Jerry Brown, that it wasn't bad enough that they passed an assisted suicide law not too long ago. That wasn't enough for them.
Right.
Now what they've done is they've passed a law, and he signed it, that allows other people to, quote, aid, advise, and encourage suicide.
That's right.
Encourage, I think, is a scary word.
Is the scary word there.
Yeah.
This is for people that they have deemed as terminally ill, and their definition of terminal is a condition expected to lead to death within 6 months. That doesn't mean it's guaranteed to.
No.
That's right. Yeah.
expected.
So this person could survive. The people, that they would assist with suicide, these people could survive.
Right.
I mean, it happens all the time.
Right.
You see that, like in coma patients and.
Well, yeah. I mean, with the proper care, like they're talking about diabetes,
Right.
high blood pressure. I mean, it's a simple go to the doctor and be put on prescription here to
We know
help
people
it.
that are functioning human beings that work every day that technically fit this definition.
And
You know?
what y'all are talking about is within 6 months if left untreated. There are a bunch of things that,
Right.
you're going to die from if you don't treat it.
Right.
I mean, people with high blood pressure, people with diabetes.
Yep.
But as long as you treat it, they're perfectly functioning human beings.
Well, I've been in motorcycle wrecks that if I were left untreated for 6 months, I would have died. That I went home from that afternoon, right?
Right.
Because I was treated.
Right.
So you're right. The key word here is encourage and untreated.
So basically, just get rid of these people that, we don't want to help these people. They're in our way. Let's just get rid of them.
Yeah, yeah, and George Soros is the one that's putting all the money behind this too. Compassion,
It's
Probably. I mean, he's behind.
well,
much of
all of
evil
it.
that goes on in this world. It's unbelievable.
And does that allow doctors to? I mean,
Yeah, it does.
Talk about physicians are there to, help people. This
Theoretically.
doesn't help people.
Right.
Doesn't
Yeah,
help
but
people.
this idea that if it's left untreated and they would die in 6 months, I can tell you there's going to be people in emergency rooms all over this country today, thousands of them in emergency rooms, that if they were left untreated,
Right,
they would die within 6 months.
right.
Yeah. And also talk about conflict of interest. Family members could say, "Oh, this person's really ill. Let's kill them." Whereas, they may just want the person's, inheritance or
It
whatever.
allows beneficiaries. It's called interested witnesses, which could be beneficiaries. And so you could have somebody who says, well, mom is getting along in years and she's got $100,000 in the bank.
We need that money.
I'd sure like to have that money for a new pickup.
Right.
Yeah.
And
If we take her off her medicine, keep her from going to the doctors, she'll die within 6 months.
Anyway, right,
so.
that's right.
That's sad.
And that sounds pretty far-fetched, but I told you a story about a friend of mine that was a nephrologist, a kidney doctor, and he had a patient that he had to go to court to keep the family from discontinuing her treatment. And the reason I knew about it is because he and I were at lunch one day, and she was working at the restaurant where we were eating lunch, and he told me 6 months earlier her family tried to force him by law to terminate treatment of her because she had money in the bank that they wanted. So we know for a fact this happens.
That's so sad.
This is disgusting.
And now California is opening the gates to allow it to happen even easier.
Right.
So,
Of course, it is California.
yeah.
Let's recognize that.
Yeah.
We had a lady call, or you had a lady contacted you not long ago talking about why we didn't talk more about Down syndrome. Apparently she's a new viewer because we've talked about Down syndrome and the relationship to abortion for years. And what a moral disgrace it is that we execute these kids. And the vast majority of children that are diagnosed with Down syndrome in the womb are executed before they're born.
Yes.
And we carried the story not long ago about Iceland is
Yeah.
out here bragging about the fact that they've basically eliminated
100%.
100% of all Down syndrome in their country because they abort 100% of them that have it.
Yes.
Well, as I said when we talked about that originally, you can eliminate any problem. We can eliminate homelessness tonight.
Yep.
We round up all the homeless people and we execute them. The homeless problem goes away with those people. So the fact that you can have a country bragging about the fact that we use abortion to wipe out a disease is, again, it's another one of these obscenities that the godless left pushes in this country.
Yes.
And it's a very, not only is it terrible to just want to eliminate a person because of a condition they have,
Right.
but it's also a very slippery slope. We can say, oh, today we're going to eliminate those with Down syndrome. Tomorrow it's going to be those with, some other
Right.
condition.
That are left-handed.
Yeah.
So, whatever it might be.
I know that we need to abolish abortion altogether, completely.
Right.
But I think that the incremental laws that need to be put into place to lead up to this, and I believe that the sex selection abortion and the prenatal testing of Down syndrome needs to be completely eliminated. It shouldn't even be an option, period.
But you can't.
No, you can't. I understand that.
Because let's say you have a child with Down syndrome, and the doctor says, well, now you can't abort that child for Down syndrome. But the irony here is that if the woman just up and says, I don't want to have this baby, then she can abort, right?
Right. Yeah.
So the irony here is that the way the law would work if you outlawed, let's say, Down syndrome abortions or sex selection abortion, which we're going to talk about here in a second, the irony is that the woman who's carrying a baby that she wants to eliminate for one of those reasons can just say, I don't have a reason for doing it. I just want to do it.
Yeah.
And where is
right.
our right to say this life is worth living over this life?
Right.
What about the right to life for every single person?
Well, to suggest that Down syndrome children, have a lesser right to life than children without Down syndrome is abominable. But this is what you get into.
Right. I mean, we're all less than perfect. It happened in the Garden of Eden when mankind took it the fall.
Right.
And how are we to judge how one quality of life is better than another quality of life?
Well, I had
we can't.
We had this discussion many years ago on Life Talk, and we had an employee here at Life Dynamics, and I brought up the point of what constitutes a handicap. Because what might be a handicap for me might not be a handicap for another man, or what might be a handicap for you is not a handicap for someone else.
Right.
This employee came and told me, she said, since the day I was a little bitty girl, my lifelong ambition was to be a ballet dancer. And she said, but it was clear by the time I was a teenager, I was not going to be thin enough. I didn't have the talent for it. I was not going to, but basically, she said, my basic problem was I was just too big I was going to be a too big a girl to be a ballet dancer. So for her, simply being larger than the average ballet dancer was a handicap. It kept her from doing what she wanted to do with her life. But like she said, would that have justified somebody killing me?
No, absolutely not. No.
There's a lot of things that I wanted to do with my life, and at my age, they're obviously long in my past, but circumstances prevented me from doing those. That doesn't mean my life wasn't worth living.
Yeah. Exactly.
And these people that kill these little Down syndrome children,
They're so happy. Like,
They are. They're
yeah,
If
if you
you-
know them, yeah.
yeah, if you, went up to them and be like, do you wish you weren't alive? They wouldn't be able to even wrap their minds around that because
that
they would be
concept.
like, wait a second, I'm
Right.
perfectly fine the way I am.
Right. Do you remember, we've talked about this before, the football coach, Gene Stallings, that was one time head coach at Texas A&M, and then later on went to Alabama, became the head coach there and won a national championship there with Alabama, which they often do, as we all know. But anyway, and I was born in Alabama, so I kind of keep up with that. But anyway, even though I'm obviously, nobody's more Texan than me, right? But anyway, Gene Stallings had a Down syndrome son. And everywhere he went, whether it was Texas A&M or Alabama or wherever he went, that little boy went with him. Every place he went. If you saw Gene Stallings, look nearby and you see this little boy. And he was supposed to only live till he was, they originally told him he wouldn't live to be 10. He'd live to be 30-something. And Gene Stallings said that, people told him that, you give birth to a child like that, it'll be the worst day of your life. He said the worst day of my life was the day he died.
Yeah.
And he was kind of the mascot at A&M and then later on at Alabama. And everybody accepted it. If Coach Stallings was nearby, this little boy was going to be there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, children with Down syndrome are living much longer now, too.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. And you know what the fearful thing about this is if they continue to wipe out the children with Down syndrome, I'm afraid we're not going to have the specialists to meet the needs of these children.
Because they won't
go into that field.
Right.
Yeah, the ones that they don't.
Right. You're exactly right. And I think you and I had this discussion one day. If you're going to wipe out these children, and this kind of relates to what you're saying, if you're going to kill all these children like they do in Iceland before, and which we're headed toward, England's doing it, and
Yes.
other
Okay.
Western industrialized countries are doing it. Why study it?
Exactly. There's no need.
There's no need to study it if you're going to kill them all anyway.
Yeah.
And plus, once they, kill them all, what's their next goal going to be? They're just going to move on to something.
Who's the next
Yeah,
target?
exactly.
Who's the
to
next
something
target?
else.
That's right. Anyway, we mentioned a moment ago sex selection abortions. England now is noticing that they are having an explosion. It's proliferating sex selection abortions in England. And they're already saying that they're down. They've reduced the female population because, let's make sure people understand something. Sex selection abortions are overwhelmingly done to eliminate a girl baby worldwide.
And I mean, you've seen that in like China,
India.
other countries. That's common. But to think the UK is now doing it too.
We're doing it here.
Exactly. But I mean, rising numbers.
I don't understand why they're doing it. I know back in the day when they needed male children to take over the farm and to
It's cultural, though.
cultural. I know, but it's not cultural today, though.
Apparently it is, Renee. That's the thing. I don't understand it either. I agree with you that why is there this big rush among people to have boy babies over girl babies? But apparently it's just handed down from previous generations.
Yeah.
And, I've read some stuff on the history of the United States, and this is true with agrarian societies in general. You wanted boy babies because you needed boys to work on the farms.
Yeah, and to carry on the last name.
And the girls were kind of a hindrance. That's why you had dowries. A family would pay somebody to take their daughter off their hands. They got up to a certain age and said, here, she's got this dowry, we'll give you this land, we'll do this. If you marry our daughter, you can take her, we'll give you all this stuff. That's a dowry.
I mean, there are some cultures that hasn't rung true for, like the Celtics. They're female warriors. They didn't consider the female to be weak. But these cultures that, try to eliminate females through sex selection abortions, they think that females are weak.
Weaker.
Yeah.
Well, if they keep eliminating the females, they're not going to have any more babies here. So no babies to carry on the last name.
Well, if you look at the history of the world, too, I saw a study on this years ago. When there's a disproportionate number of male babies born, you can look just a few years down the road, and what you see is a radical uptick in the number of wars. And, China now is saying we have a major shortage of females in our country.
Yes.
And guys are growing up not able to get a wife
Yeah.
because there's just not enough women to go around.
Yeah, I don't know the statistics, but I know it's like 1 in 10 or something.
Right.
Don't.
1 in 10 Chinese men are destined to never be able to get a wife. Or something like I've seen the numbers.
Yeah,
It's staggering.
I don't know the number.
And where are
And the same thing is happening in India. And now they're saying there's a woman that's put out a book called The Abolition of Women, Fiorella Nash, and she says the estimates are that missing girls that are missing in the world is 160 million because of sex selection abortion.
Where are the feminists outraged over this? They're worried about my body, my choice. Well, what about these, fellow females that are getting eliminated, period?
They don't care about that.
They don't.
If they were being murdered,
Yeah.
they'd care. But because they're being aborted, they don't care.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the holy grail for these people is abortion.
And what's next? I mean, with this early testing, just kind of like, what else are we going to eliminate besides Down syndrome? Any genetic, you
Right.
can say, oh, this is a weakness.
Now,
and-
now that you bring Down syndrome up again, in England, there's a woman named Naz Shaw, and she is decrying this issue of gendercide, eliminating babies because they're female. But she supports using abortion to eliminate children with disabilities. And she says, quote, "Screening should be used for their intended purpose, to screen for serious conditions such as Down syndrome."
Yeah, well, when you have the screenings for intended purposes for Down syndrome, then look what happens. It starts eliminating females.
Well, I think she's hypocritical.
Well, yeah.
Well, sure she is. Obviously she is. But I'll ask y'all this question. Let's say this woman gets her way, and Down syndrome babies can be aborted. That's perfectly fine. She said she's actually saying that's what the intended purpose of this prenatal testing is.
And that's perfectly fine.
That's
with them.
perfectly fine. But you shouldn't be able to use it to eliminate girls. All right. A woman is pregnant with a female baby that has Down syndrome.
Where does she stand on that one?
So now what she's saying is, if that mom looks at me and says, "I want to abort this baby because I want a boy," I'm going to fight her tooth and nail. She cannot abort that baby. But if that same woman carrying that same baby says, "I want to abort this baby because it has Down syndrome," all of a sudden that's its intended purpose. I mean, the hypocrisy of these people and just the sheer immorality of them is mind-boggling.
Yes, it is.
A life is a life is a life.
Right.
That's it, period.
End
End
of
of
story.
discussion.
Right.
A life is a life. We do not have the right to take someone else's life.
Yeah, let's leave that decision up to God. We'll let him work that out.
That's right.
But anyway, when we come back from RoeBots, we're going to be talking about a conversation that you and I had with a young lady that called the other day
Yes.
about babies being left to die that didn't die in an abortion, just being put up on a table and left. And then we're also going to be talking about a little bit, give our thoughts on the Kavanaugh situation, which is a national embarrassment and it's a disgrace. What's going on here.
A clown show.
Yeah, it's worse than a clown show because at least you can laugh at clowns. This is serious.
Yeah.
This is serious business. Anyway, let's take a break for RoeBots.
In 1973, the U.S. Supreme Court legalized abortion nationwide. The decision is called Roe v. Wade, and those who defend it are known as RoeBots. This is how they think.
Any government that can tell a woman she can't have an abortion can also tell her she has to have one.
To appreciate the sheer stupidity of this argument, try to name one thing the federal government or any state legislature has ever outlawed and then required people to do. I mean, have you ever heard of people being forced by the government to snort cocaine or run red lights or cheat on their taxes or have sex with their children or murder their spouses? Actually, if we look around the world today, what we see is that the only places where women are forced to have abortions by their governments are in countries where abortion is legal, not illegal. Let's also remember that when abortion was illegal in the United States, pregnant women did not spend a lot of their time worrying that they were about to be dragged in off the street and forced by the government to have abortions. We also know that today, women and girls are often forced or intimidated into abortions by boyfriends, husbands, parents, social workers, teachers, school counselors, and others, including relatives of the guy who got her pregnant. Sometimes this force is accompanied by physical violence, and it is not unheard of for women who refuse to comply to be murdered. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that this sort of violence and intimidation is a whole lot easier to carry out when abortion is legal. Of course, we never hear the abortion industry talking about these forced abortions because they prefer to talk about the forced abortions in the future that in reality could never happen. But if I'm wrong, and the pro-choice community really is concerned about forced abortions, here is a perfect solution. Congress just needs to pass legislation making it a federal crime for anyone to force or coerce a woman to have an abortion against her will. It's a simple, fail-safe solution that the pro-life movement would certainly support. But of course, the only holdup would be getting the abortion lobby on board. After all, a significant percentage of the money they are raking in right now comes from selling abortions to customers who are being forced to have them. And for-profit institutions never lobby for legislation that would cost them business. We are back. The other day, Renee, you and I got a call from a lady who said that she had been in an environment where she was around some nurses that apparently worked in a OBGYN ward or a NICU unit or something like that at a hospital. And these nurses were talking about the abortions that failed,
Yes.
where they just take the baby out and lay them up on a table and let them expire, and the babies are alive. And she said these nurses were all just kind of casually talking about it. Yeah, we see this, pretty routinely. And we know that goes on. And of course, our friend Jill Stanek,
Yes.
Stanek brought this up years and years ago
Yes.
when she was working at Christ Hospital in Chicago.
Right.
And they actually had closets where they took the babies that were born alive and just set them in the closet, in a linen closet, and just left them in there.
Yeah.
And there might be more than one in there slowly dying.
Right.
And this lady was horrified by this, of course. And that's totally understandable because you're seeing this picture.
You're visually seeing
visually
it.
seeing it in your head.
And you can actually hold the baby if you
Right.
choose to. Yeah.
But, I told her, and it's hard to, you almost sound cold-blooded saying this. But the fact is, those babies, the babies that are killed in the wombs, in other words, the babies that are successful and don't have to be put in a closet to die, they're babies too.
Yeah.
Can you imagine being perfectly happy and fine in the womb, the dark place that's supposed to be safe, and then all of a sudden having either a chemical come eat you alive or a vacuum, some pokey object start pulling you apart?
Yeah.
The problem
Can you
is
imagine that?
there's not a window in the womb, so
Right.
you can't visually see what's going on.
But
Those babies.
the fact is, it's like I caught a lot of flack back during the battle over partial birth abortion for making the point that, this is a horrific thing. The baby's pulled halfway out, dangling outside, only the head is left in, and you stick these Metzenbaum scissors in the back of the skull and suck the brain out to kill the baby. Mm-hmm. But that's not any worse than if the baby were left fully in the womb and they did a standard D&E, which is going on every day all over this country right now.
Yeah.
And to some degree, I don't want to be critical, and I told this lady I wasn't being critical of her. I said, but one of the problems with the pro-life movement is we don't always fully emotionally understand our own rhetoric. Mm-hmm. And if we're going to say that an unborn child being murdered is wrong, then it doesn't matter whether that murder occurs fully inside the womb
Right.
or partially inside the womb or left on a table and killed later on.
That's
Or
right.
left to just pass away.
At the end of the day, the baby in the wound is abandoned. The baby in those closets are abandoned.
Right.
They're all abandoned. They're all killed for no reason whatsoever.
Nothing.
Well, and this goes back to the Plan B, and this goes back to birth control because a baby is still a baby and it just can't implant.
Right.
I mean, it's take it back.
Kind of what Sheila was alluding to there a moment ago, and something that I've written about in the past, and you and I have stated here on Life Talk, Renee. Think about the fact that God creates this precious little baby. Mm-hmm. And believe me, God does see them as precious.
Sure.
What was the only place in Scripture where God was not very forgiving? It's when you harm children, when you harm babies. Those were the places where God kind of drew the line, and you didn't cross. That was a line you didn't cross. What was the line? You'd be better off to have a millstone tied around your neck and dropped in the deepest part of the ocean, right? But God creates this precious, precious little baby, puts it into a mother's womb, sends that baby here, and the only human contact that child ever has is with the mother that hires some goon to kill that baby, and then the goon himself. That's the only human contact. That baby comes here and is sent back, and that's the only human contact that child ever has, is with the mother that should be the person that protects that child more than any other person on the face of this earth. But we've eliminated that. We've talked about that many times, how we've destroyed maternal instincts now. But that baby only has contact with those two people, the mother that rejected him and the animal, the goon, that killed him.
Right.
And in cases of twins, either they get killed together or
Right.
one twin is left and the other one is ripped apart right in front of their sibling's face.
It's astonishing. But by the time we got off that phone call, I think she rejected a little bit what I was saying right at first because she didn't understand it. But before we got off that phone call, the last thing I think she said is, "You're exactly right. We need to be as upset about the babies that are killed in utero as the babies that we envision in our mind sitting on top of a table,
Right.
just wiggling around and waiting to die." Anyway, that's what you get into when you legalize abortion.
Right. Exactly.
You have to just be willing to accept all of this junk that goes along with it.
Yep.
Speaking of junk, what's happening right now with Brett Kavanaugh, and obviously this is Tuesday, and they're supposed to hold a hearing Thursday and maybe vote Friday or maybe vote sometime next week. Who knows? The gutless Republicans keep caving in to the other side. But what's going on here is a national disgrace, and it's embarrassing. If the rest of the world is watching this, this is an embarrassing time to be an American.
Well, it's very inconvenient timing, too, for the Democrats.
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
and now you've got moral degenerates, moral defectives, like Richard Blumenthal, senator from, I think he's from Connecticut. He and other Democrats now, but he's the one I have a tape of, I have watched on the internet, on a TV show. He is actually saying, not that this woman or these, if there's 100 of them, it doesn't matter. They don't have to prove anything. That once Kavanaugh is accused, he actually is saying that Kavanaugh has a responsibility to prove he's innocent.
What happened to innocent until proven guilty?
That's out the window. That's
Exactly.
gone. Now, but the other thing is, you can't prove a negative. And it'd be like me saying, people eat frog legs. So have you ever eaten a frog leg? And you say, no, I've never eaten a frog leg. All right, how do you prove that? You could prove that you have eaten one. You could have a video of you eating one or something, but you can't prove that you didn't.
Right.
So you can't prove a negative. So what they're saying to Kavanaugh, and some of them are just like this animal Blumenthal, they're just openly stating it, that Kavanaugh has an obligation to prove that he didn't do it.
Well,
the way
I
our
think-
system works, the accused doesn't have to prove anything.
Christy Ford needs to prove that it happened.
Right.
The person can't even. She can't even remember the details about what happened. It's not her. It's not his job to prove his innocence. It's her
Right.
job to prove him guilty.
And I mean, there are some people saying, yes, we need this to have a hearing. But there are some people that are like, you know what? Let's not even have a hearing. Let's just not confirm him.
Right. Let's just
Yeah.
nuke him. He's guilty.
So I think that's very telling when they
Right.
say that.
But
Well, this whole thing goes back to abortion. It did from the very
from the start.
beginning. They were spazzing out
Right.
even before he was.
Spazzing out.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
Yeah.
Even before he was picked.
But and now some of them are even admitting this isn't about Kavanaugh. This is about abortion. Even some of them are openly stating that this is about abortion. But I think the Democrats I think the Republicans and the Democrats have some stuff they need to be worried about. First off, the Republicans have already shown, as is their history, that they're not fighters.
They're spineless.
The spineless, gutless wimps. They had a hearing scheduled. It was like, what, last Thursday? This woman comes forward at the 11th hour. And by the way, everybody says, well, how do we know whether her charges are not believable or not? Dianne Feinstein didn't believe them. She sat on them for 6 weeks. If she thought for a moment that they were true, she'd have brought them up when she was interviewing Kavanaugh, or she'd have brought them up at some other point. She didn't bring them up until it was a Hail Mary pass.
That's right.
Right? That's exactly what this was a Hail Mary pass.
Yep.
And when the game is lost, you've got nothing to lose but standing back and chunk the ball as far as you can, right? That's what this is about.
That's right.
So she knew that the charges weren't legitimate. She didn't have any faith in them, or she'd have brought them up earlier. But I think the Democrats and the Republicans, of course, have weaned out. When have you ever heard in your life of a witness coming forward with something and Congress or a court somewhere or whatever saying, okay, we're going to investigate this, and the witness said, okay, but here's my conditions.
Yeah, right.
Here.
And they go along with it.
And they go along with it.
Yeah.
They cave into it.
Right.
So first she comes out and she says, all I want is a chance to tell my story. They say, okay, come tell your story to the hearing. Oh, okay. No. 24 hours later, no, I don't want to come to that hearing. That's too soon.
Yeah, because she has to get her story straight. Everybody has to collaborate here to get their story
And
straight.
they were looking for somebody to back her up, and they couldn't find her.
Yeah.
So then all of a sudden she comes up with these conditions. I won't do it Thursday, but I'll do it next Monday. Well, that was yesterday. No, that date passed, and they gave her another extension. And then they may give her another one before it's all over.
I would be like, you can take your conditions
Right.
and don't let the door hit you on your butt on the way out.
Right, exactly. But that's the way it would be done if A, the Republicans had any backbone, and B, this were any other environment. That's exactly what would have been done. Can you imagine, Renee, that you had information about a crime here in Denton, and you were willing to testify about it or talk to the Denton police about it, but you call the police and you say, now here's my conditions for coming forward.
Right.
And
They would say, forget you, you're crazy.
we'd say,
We're not using
if
you.
we want this information, you know what we'll do? We'll just get a warrant,
Right.
and you will come forward.
Yeah.
And it's not about not believing women. I mean, it's not, this isn't believable at all,
This
you
whole
know?
story is
Exactly.
amazing. And now they've got another one that they claim,
And another one.
So, well, we'll
have-
get to that. Yeah,
Okay.
we'll get to that in a minute. But they've got a second one now who says that he exposed himself to her at a drunken rave party or something in college.
Right.
Then she tries to call, I think it was 6 people that were supposedly at that party to get backup for her story. And now it comes out that she even told some of those people she wasn't really sure, can you help me out here?
Yeah. Right.
And she says, I
Can you
think...
give me some details? I was too drunk.
Right, that's right. That's exactly what she said.
Yeah.
I was hammered, and I think I saw Brett Kavanaugh there, and I saw somebody pull their pants down.
And I'm not sure if it was him. It was dark.
It was, yeah.
And my eyes were glazed over.
I was glazed over, and I was, in a drunken stupor. And some of these, nobody was willing to say, of the 6 people that she supposedly called, none of them were willing to say, yes, it happened, or most of them said, I don't even remember him being there.
Yeah.
And she herself admits that she doesn't know it, but she's the second witness now, right?
Right.
Now you've got this porn lawyer, Michael Avenatti, that's representing Stormy Daniels, and he claims yesterday that he's got a third witness that he's going to bring forward in 48 hours. Why 48 hours?
Why? Yeah.
Why not right now?
Because
They have to get their stories
y'all
straight.
know that I'm a little bit of a conspiracy theorist. And I go to the forums and,
Yeah, I know,
follow.
you're nutty.
But I mean,
Anyway.
even people that aren't conspiracy theorists, they're like, who's paying off these people? George Soros is probably one,
Right.
but like the deep state, they're trying to do every single thing that they can to not get him nominated.
Right.
So they're just going to keep on pouring more money into it.
Well, first off, the deep state falls way outside the purview of a conspiracy. It's now a fact.
Yeah.
With what's
yeah.
going on with the Trump investigation on Russia collusion,
Yeah.
this is frightening. Our country could be collapsing right in front of our eyes over this if this is allowed to continue. But the fact is, they got nothing. They're trying to make something out of nothing. If there ever was a Hail Mary political pass, this is it.
Yeah.
This is the one. And
it's not going to end.
the Republicans had better be careful on this. The Democrats better be careful because they're setting a standard that they're going to have to live with in the future, right?
Yes.
Because someday, God help us, there's going to be a Democratic president again, and that person's going to have the opportunity to appoint a Supreme Court justice. And now we've set this standard that if somebody just comes forward and says something, then it's true. And when you're given the fact of the kind of people that are attracted to the Democratic Party, the kind of moral defectives and degenerates, and that wasn't always the case. That's a recent development.
And they've become more extreme. I mean, extreme. They're going way farther off to the left, which is a problem.
The Democratic Party is now a sanctuary for every sort of moral degenerate and defective known to man. That's where you go. If you're a moral degenerate, you become a Democrat. And they may not like that. I don't care if they like it or not. That's a reality.
They're becoming communists.
That's good.
You can laugh. Is it true or not?
Yes, it is.
Right.
Agree.
But here's the deal. Then that's the pool that's the pool of people you've got to get your political operatives and your Supreme Court nominees from. So that means they're going to have a lot of skeletons in the closet. And you've already set up this thing now that you don't have to prove those skeletons are real or not.
Right.
Just have somebody come forward and say, this guy did this. Oh, well, then he's guilty.
Okay, that's it.
He's guilty.
Yep.
The Republicans got to be careful, though, because if they let this continue, if they keep on caving in, and let's say that Kavanaugh has to withdraw or he's defeated because the Republicans didn't support him 1,000%, let me tell you something. People like us three right here, we won't be supporting them in the November elections.
I don't like people that allow themselves to be pushed around.
Be bullied,
And that's exactly what the Republican Party is doing.
We were laughing about how graphic do we want to be about this, so I'll clean it up a little bit. In Texas, we do know the difference between a bull and a steer, do we not?
That's right.
Right?
Most of us.
The Republican Party has proven over the years to be steers and not bulls. And that's a very telling description. They need to grow some, right?
There you go.
Finally, they need to get, and it's like if you're driving down here, not very far from here, there's a big field where there's a bunch of cattle, right?
Right.
If you look in there and you notice that all the cattle in there are steers, they don't cause you any problem. If you want to climb that fence and have a picnic in that field, those steers will leave you alone. You're not scared of them. If there's one bull in that field, you're not going in there, right?
Right.
Well, that's the difference.
You're a little bit more fearful.
That's the difference between the Republicans and the Democrats. And the Republicans are steers. They've always been steers. We need to see these guys become the bulls that they need to be. And if they don't, our people are going to drop them like hot rocks come November.
Yeah.
And if you don't think that abortion's the issue, we're at way over time. I got to get out of here, but
You don't want to be here anymore?
well, no, it's just my job to keep the time because when the show is over and it ran way over, then y'all are the ones who jump on me for letting the show go too long. So to keep from having that happen to me, which it's already too late for that, Kavanaugh can stop this nonsense anytime he chooses to and be confirmed and probably a voice vote, no opposition. All he's got to do is come out today and say, I've looked at this abortion issue. Roe was correctly decided. I would never support a case that would challenge Roe versus Wade. Abortion is a constitutional right. If he were to come out and say that,
They would go away.
all opposition to him poof, evaporates instantly. It's gone. And when these people say they care about this woman Ford, whether she's lying or not, of course she's obviously telling the truth because she's going up against this conservative Republican.
They're just using her.
They're using her. And the proof of that is the fact that if Kavanaugh were to do that, poof, the abortion industry goes away and they would drop this woman like a hot rock. They would never again bring up her name. She's done. There's going to be no hearings. There's going to be no repercussions from this. Any of these women that come forward, supposedly,
Yeah.
they drop them in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
So it's all about abortion. And these women, this woman may be a college professor, and maybe she doesn't mind being used. Maybe she doesn't mind being exploited like this. But the fact is, my theory is she's not smart enough to know that these people are riding her like a pony.
Or she just has no dignity and doesn't care.
Right, one or the other.
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll see how this plays out. Hopefully by this time next week, we'll have some better answers about this. But
Yep.
what's happening here is a national embarrassment. And this is what you get when you put godless, moral degenerates in elective office. And people better start recognizing this. I've said it before. The problem that we have in America today is godlessness. And we've put these godless people, we've always had godless people in this country, always. We just didn't make U.S. senators out of them.
Right.
PC culture.
And now we are. And these people like Blumenthal and Chuck Schumer and the rest of them, they are classic examples of that. Anyway, y'all got anything else?
I don't have anything.
We're out of time. How about you, Doppy?
Idiots. Idiots.
Right.
That's all I have to say about that.
Right. We're out of time. Until next Tuesday, remember, Life Dynamics is not here to put up a good fight. We're here to win, because winning is how the killing stops. We'll see you next week.